everybody. It's Dr. Cindy with the Positively Altered podcast. Today's episode is going to be a little unique. We've got a spin on sleep. Well, everybody talks about sleep, how important it is, how we don't get enough, why we need it. But there's going to be an interesting little twist today where we're going to bring in something you probably didn't think about and its relationship to sleep. So hang tight, take a quick listen to our sponsors. You don't want to miss this because there will be something new to learn on today's episode of the Positively Altered podcast.
Hello, my name is Heather Lord, and I am the COO of Professional Health Products. Cutting corners is an all too common practice in the dietary supplement industry. When my father founded Professional Health Products, he sourced the cleanest, most biologically active ingredients from around the globe. Today, that commitment remains, which is why the finest healthcare practitioners, like Dr. Cindy, have trusted us for more than 40 years. We oversee the entire process in our manufacturing facility, from sourcing and formulation to manufacturing and labeling. Today, we offer over 300 unique products that can be tailored to the nutritional and homeopathic needs of each individual. Most recently, we launched a proprietary genetic test, allowing our practitioners to get even more dialed in to their patients' health. To learn more about Professional Health Products, please talk to your practitioner or visit our website at phpltd.com.
Today, your life is going to be altered. I'm Dr. Cindy.
Welcome to Infinity. We have worked hard to create an electronic claims website that is simple and user-friendly. This is the public side. You can log into your personal web portal here. This is your dashboard. You can personalize it to your liking here. Our main focus has been to allow you to submit and edit claims as easy as possible. You will find our claims editor and claims processing is simple to use and straightforward. Our quick action bar is where you can find your most important information. Most of these icons will take you directly to the claims the number represents. You can easily view if you have any messages in your inbox of any unread alerts by looking for these blue numbers. To view the rest of our training videos to get the most of your Infinity experience, click this icon. We hope you find this web portal simple and easy to use. Thanks for letting us serve you.
I'm Dr. Cindy. Who wouldn't want to join me for the Positively Altered podcast? We are back. I am Dr. Cindy with the Positively Altered podcast. Thank you so much for taking a listen to our commercial sponsors. You know they're extremely important to me, but this topic is equally important to me and actually really interesting. Today's guest is Dr. Benjamin Long. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Hey, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Oh my gosh, I'm so intrigued. So we are coupling two things together that I know most people probably don't couple together, right? Mm-hmm. One is sleep, which is very important, and I want to start there. But the second is theology, religion, and how they're related. So we're going to make everybody wait a little bit to see how they're connected. Let's create some excitement first, but let's talk about sleep because we all do it.
Yep.
It's like the everybody poops book, everybody sleeps book, right? Everybody sleeps or should be sleeping. Give me like high level, why is sleep important? How much should we get? Where are we screwing it up? And I know that's probably like an hour conversation.
No, it makes total sense. I think big picture, you think of your whole body and all of the different parts of your body, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your gut, your immune system, all of those things. If you just take sleep deprivation and incorporate that into some part of your body, then things are just worse. Sleep touches all parts of us as people. And so, we can go down any kind of pathway and we're going to be able to find something. Some of the most prominent research is around, your brain health and your heart health and blood pressure and things of that nature. But we know sleep is important for health. And then it wasn't until, the mid 20th century when we realized, sleep is this really dynamic thing. That's not just I lie down, close my eyes, and I'm just out for however many hours. there's a lot that's going on in the brain and in the body during that time. And so for adults, typically 7 to 9 hours of sleep is what's recommended as age appropriate normal. But there are people who are kind of slightly on the edge of those things. If you think about your typical kind of bell curve, we talk about 2 standard deviations right at that tail. Those are the people who are definitely you're outside of normal. The people who don't get a lot of attention are those that are in that 90 to 95th percentile. They're like definitely not average, but they're also not so far beyond that they are abnormal. And so kind of a similar thing happens with our sleep. There are some people who truly are short sleepers and they can sleep 6 hours. And there are some people who are truly long sleepers and they need somewhere around 10 to 11 hours as well. And so my job as a sleep medicine physician is just trying to kind of figure out, where are you at? What does your body need? But high level, definitely 7 to 9 hours is what's typical for adults.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So we talk about adults. I want to talk about the teenage population really quickly, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and stress around that, right? Because there's the teenager that doesn't get out of bed until 1, 2 o'clock, on a Saturday or Sunday because they're up at 5:30 to go to school.
Yeah.
What is your philosophy on that? Like, should we be letting our kids sleep when they need sleep? And are we actually screwing this up by getting them up early to go to class?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. I'll start with before teenage years and the elementary kind of age range, children typically need around 9 to 11 hours of sleep per 24-hour period. And then that slightly decreases to teenage years to 8 to 10. So still more than your typical adult at that 7 to 9. And then the other thing that happens with our circadian rhythm is there's a natural delay. Talk to any parent who has like a toddler. They will all tell you, yeah, they like get up at 5 a.m. And I'm like, go back to bed, kind of a thing. And so it's natural for younger children to have a circadian rhythm that's earlier than their parents. And that starts to shift and get a little bit later around adolescence. And for some teenagers, that shift really is a large swing, and you can get what's called delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. It meaning that your body wants to fall asleep at a time that is later than the societal norms for the culture that you live in. So it's not necessarily a problem with you and your body. It's the fact that you live in modern America and we have a 9 to 5 kind of business hours. And then with school specifically having, early school start times, that is a big area of advocacy for pediatric sleep doctors, is talking about later school start times for our teenagers. Because even if you're not to the point where you're the delayed sleep-wake phase, we know that all teenagers will have some amount of shift. So you can think of it as if typically kids are going to bed closer to like a 8 or 9 p.m. bedtime, or maybe even slightly earlier than that, then you might, delay by a couple hours with adolescence versus that delayed sleep-wake phase. It might be really until midnight to 1, 2 a.m. that those kids don't get sleepy. And so that's its own kind of thing that we could have a whole conversation on. But all teenagers as a whole, they are going to be a little bit later. And so when they've done research on school start times, actually just delaying it until after, I think it's the 8 a.m. is kind of the recommended earliest school start time. And when they have done research looking at that, there is, on a large population level, there is an impact on attendance, which then goes as far as graduation rates. If you talk to any high school teacher who has like a really early school start time, they'll be like, yeah, no one is awake in my first period. Like they are all like sleeping. They're just not there. So naturally your grades are going to suffer if you're not awake enough to be able to be fully present and learning what you need to learn in that first class of the day as well. So there is still that misconception. And so naturally in America too, we naturally use our weekends to catch up on our sleep, quote unquote, catch up. I put that in quotes because it is helpful in the short run as far as, getting your energy back and then kind of getting back to a baseline in some degree. But any amount of sleep deprivation is going to have some kind of impact on your body. So it's not 100% catch up and that you have erased any damage that has been done to the body. And I try to not catastrophize things because we all have seasons of sleeplessness. And so it's really, when you look at the full picture of a life, how much sleep deprivation you're incurring over a whole life compared to having smaller seasons and things of that nature.
Okay, so it makes me think about like how students should be like second shift, right?
Yeah.
Instead of first.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about that, because I know like I have patients a lot of times that work that second shift, or actually even worse, that third shift. And now we see chronic illness, we see poor immune system, like lots of challenges. And yet I suppose they could alter their career because everybody does have a choice, but theoretically, right? Like if that's the career they've chosen and the shift they're given, not everybody can just walk out within 5 minutes. So what kind of detriment do we see in that sleep space when we are working or living in a second shift or a third shift world?
Yeah, that's great question. I think the biggest thing is what you already kind of said as far as like changing your career. Like that's the biggest thing, is just not operating in that time slot. And so a lot of people that I talk to about that is also talking to schedulers, people in charge of like, hey, let's have a logical thought through way that we do shift work and do scheduling as well. So some of that is education for employers. So maybe someone isn't necessarily in a position of power that they can change that or have the privilege to be able to move to a different career field. But, there are resources that if your schedule is just like flip-flopped all over the place and there's no kind of logic to it, I see this oftentimes in like security personnel that I have done some workshops for, where they had this schedule. It was just like, I'm on nights and then I'm on days and I'm just like going all over the place, when it's more natural for our body to shift later. So if you're starting in a later shift, then going to the next one, then going to that instead of just flip-flopping back and forth. And so, asking, hey, whoever's making the schedule, have they had any training on the fundamentals of shift work scheduling? And literally you could Google that. The Air Force Research Lab did a whole like document that can train someone of like, this is how you can prioritize what the body needs in order to have appropriate shift work. So one of it is just advocating and trying to say, hey, here's some things that could possibly be better. The other thing is, if you are in that, when does your body want to sleep? We talked a little bit about circadian rhythms. So there truly are people who are quote unquote night owls or morning larks, where it's just, I don't want to fall asleep until later in the evening. So for those people, it actually would probably be better for them to operate in those kind of later shifts. So I think one of them is just, acknowledging like what's the impact it's having on my specific body. If you are in a shift that that's not when your body wants to be awake, then you need to really be thinking about how that's going to impact your health long term, compared to someone who they hear these things about night shift workers who have all of this disease and other kind of chronic health outcomes. And they're like, well, I don't, I've always been a night person. Am I going to have all of these same things? I think I can't necessarily say a definite no, because it's not just your circadian rhythm. There's a lot of, other factors that are going into that. One, you think about diet, for our night shift workers, oftentimes it's more easy for them to have not a nutritious diet compared to people who are working during the day. So there's a lot of factors that are going into it. But if we're just taking that circadian rhythm, then they can rest a little bit more assured that they're like, hey, I've always been a person, I can't fall asleep until 2 a.m. and then I wake up at noon or something like that and I feel fine and I have no problems. Then you can be rest assured, if you're working around that schedule, then that's going to be a little bit better for you than someone who has a typical sleeping schedule.
Okay, so now we're getting older and we're retired and we don't have to get up at 6 o'clock to go to work or to go to school. And we see that a lot of times in our elderly clientele, they're sleeping less. What happens physiologically? Why is it as we're aging, it seems as though we don't need as much sleep or we're not getting as much sleep?
Yeah. I think, the verdict is probably still a little bit out, as far as we know that older adults don't sleep as much And so then the question is like, okay, so then should we try, is that normal for them just as we age? Are we just going to have decreased amounts of sleep? That seems to be the trajectory. If we look at a full lifespan, newborn infants sleep 14 to 17 hours per 24-hour period, which then some parents of newborns are like, that's crazy. That can't be true. This thing never sleeps, kind of a thing. And then that goes down all the way to the 7 to 9, and then might be slightly lower for our elder adults. So it's like, is that just the natural as we're getting older, we're just not going to sleep as much? That's one kind of thought process as well, versus all of the sleep deprivation and all of the health issues and just everything that my body has accumulated over the course of years. Is that the reason why I'm sleeping less as well? And so again, the hard part about sleep, since it touches so many things, in the same way, it's sometimes kind of hard to like isolate that from other things as well. So all that to say, I think we do know that people in the elderly population tend to sleep less. And then some of that is what you're talking about, just that social environment. I don't have a 9-to-5 job anymore, so then I can just kind of sleep whenever. And so then what happens oftentimes is then I get my nappers, like I'll, okay, well, I wake up and then I'll just start getting sleepy a little bit, in the morning. So then I'll take a nap. And then I wake up when my circadian rhythms on an upswing. I'm more alert by mid-morning, and then I have my afternoon nap. And so then it just leads to this more fragmentation. And so oftentimes the good place to start as a sleep medicine physician is I just get a sleep diary for my elderly patients. And then if I take the average over 2 weeks and it's still in that 7 to 9 hours, then, we're still pretty good. And oftentimes when you count in those naps and those other things, then people are really closer to that 7 to 9 hour range. But it's right. It's true. Like when you get to those people who are in that like 6 hour range, it's like, okay, what's going on here? Is there something I need to kind of address?
Okay. So I've always felt, and I'm ready for you to tell me I'm wrong, but I've always felt that a nap is an indication that something is wrong with your cortisol rhythm in the middle of the day, and that we really shouldn't need to take a nap in order to get through the day. What are your thoughts on that? Am I wrong?
Not necessarily. I think one thing that I always...
I like how gentle you were about that, Ben. Not necessarily. It wasn't just a flat out, yes, you're wrong.
No, because I think one thing I tell all of the students that I teach, sleep is a biological and psychological process within a social cultural context. And so there are many cultures around the world that do a siesta, that have a midday nap. And I'm like, hey, can I move to one of those places and just like shut down in the middle of the day? That'd be great. And so I think that's one aspect of just necessarily the presence of a nap alone, I don't think is necessarily wrong. But also it's a matter of how long is that nap? We know that your circadian rhythm does tend to kind of like, start dipping kind of around that midday. So, often people think it's because I had, an unhealthy meal, like a lot of carbs or a lot of fat or something, and that's what's making me sleepy. Certainly that can be contributing to it as well. But also depending upon the time that you woke up, there are two processes that regulate your sleep. You have process S and process C. So process S is your sleep pressure. From the time you wake up, that builds, and builds. And you can think of that roughly as adenosine that builds up in the brain. And so for anyone who's listening, adenosine is that receptor that when you drink caffeine, it blocks your adenosine receptor. So that's one of those myths of caffeine. It doesn't actually make you more awake. It makes you less aware of your sleepiness because it blocks that receptor. And so the more that adenosine is building up in your body, the more sleepy that you get. And that is a linear from the time you're awake, versus your circadian rhythm is that waxing and waning pattern. That's an alerting pattern. And so the way to think about this is if you have been awake for 24 hours, you might notice all of a sudden mid-morning the next day, you're either have a slight burst of energy or you're not as sleepy as you once were, which makes no sense because you've been awake for now 25, 26 hours. But that's because of your circadian rhythm. Your body has been entrained to have certain periods of the day that you are just more awake and you have more energy. So there's a natural point, depending upon the time that you wake up, where usually by midday, your circadian rhythm is not as much on the upswing. And so especially if you've been up earlier or you have some amount of sleep deprivation, it's more common for you to have a little bit more sleepiness during the day. So it can be a symptom of I'm not getting adequate sleep. But it really goes back to, well, then how much sleep am I getting over like a full 24-hour period, or how long of a nap am I actually taking? Because people who tell me I'm a terrible napper, oftentimes they are sleeping for like 2 or 3 hours for your nap. And I'm like, that's not a nap. That is sleep. You are just sleeping, which is why it's not, you're not getting the refreshing benefit, because a true nap that is going to have great benefits as far as like increasing your energy, helping your mood a little bit more. Those are going to be closer to a 15 to 20 minute nap.
Oh, see, now you've sort of answered my question, because I am not a napper at all.
Yeah.
But on a very rare occasion, if I've been traveling a lot and I'm exhausted, a little burnt out, I've always felt that it would be better for me to go to bed really early. And there have been times I've done that. Like I've gone to sleep at like 6:30, 7 o'clock and slept through the night versus taking the nap. And you just sort of answered my question, because if I'm going to fall asleep, it's never for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I feel lousy after what I would have called a nap, right?
Yeah.
Falling asleep for a couple hours in the afternoon. And I feel worse. So I've always pushed myself to then just stay up a little bit longer and get a longer night's sleep in order to refresh. So I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
I'm not napping.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because that sleep pressure, as it builds, that kind of is in response to how much slow wave sleep you're going to get when you are falling asleep. So for the sleep stages, you have non-REM 1, 2, and 3. So non-REM being when your eyes are not having rapid movements. And then you have REM. REM is typically when we think about dreaming and you have the rapid eye movement. And then non-REM 1 is very transitional. You're only in there for, a few minutes. Non-REM 2 is where we spend probably most of our night sleeping. And then we dip down kind of into 3, which can be called deep sleep, slow wave sleep. And then you also will intermittently go to REM. And so as you have more sleep pressure and your body needs to kind of be refreshed and restored, your body kind of prioritizes going into deep sleep. And when you are suddenly come out of deep sleep, and not in kind of a natural state where you're going to a different stage, that leads to a lot of what's called sleep inertia, is that grogginess and you just feel terrible. So that's why limiting yourself to a 15 to 20 minute nap is more helpful, because you're not letting yourself get down to that deep sleep.
Okay. So selfishly, I have another question for you. I know a ton of people that they claim they don't sleep well. You can tiptoe across the room and they know you're in there. I am the exact opposite. I don't know if you remember the movie Black Hawk Down.
Oh, yeah.
I can sleep through that. Literally.
Yeah.
Freight train running through the bedroom. You can be coughing hysterically. There is nothing that disturbs me when I'm sleeping. Is there anything unhealthy about that?
Not necessarily. No, I think some of it, the one thing we don't think about around sleep is sleep is also that psychological process, is you're having some conditioning that's happening around it too. So very similar phenomenon when you hear people like, oh, I got to have white noise. I got to have something. And what we're really saying by that is I have conditioned myself to need this specific thing in my environment to be able to fall asleep. We all do that. And anytime you are falling asleep in your typical environment, you are conditioning yourself to those specific conditions, which is why when you go to a hotel or somewhere that's not typical, it's not necessarily that like, I can't sleep because I'm not at home. But most people will realize the first night that they're away from their typical sleeping environment, and the more different it is from your sleeping environment, you're going to have not quite as restful of a sleep as you would get at home. And so your brain, it's that same thing. We think of sleep as this off switch that everything's just off. Your brain's still going. So you're still receiving those auditory stimuli and things from the environment. So some of that could be, thanks to the environment that you grew up in. Maybe you had a little bit more noise and stuff like that in the surrounding environment. And so then really like nothing is going to disturb your sleep as much compared to other people who, like they're used to a very quiet environment. And so any kind of noise is like a danger signal, like, I got to wake up kind of a thing.
I love that you said that because I have patients all the time who are like, my brain won't turn off. And I'm like, it doesn't. And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So, right. We focus on some of the wrong mechanisms. Okay. I want to take a shift here because I could ask you 1,000 questions about sleep because it's so important, but I want to hit on something that's really unique, I think, that a lot of people don't think about. And I'm going to look away from you for a hot second because I don't want to say the book title wrong, but you've got a brand new book coming out called Sleep Habits Journal: Practices, Prayers, and Devotions to Ease Your Sleepless Nights. Did I say that correctly?
Yep. 100%.
Okay. So I want to go here. So like if medical school wasn't enough, right? Like if you just, it's enough. I don't know how you, I don't know how most people, right? We're getting through some of this education, but if medical school wasn't enough, you're now in school, right? To study theology.
Mm-hmm.
I know we give herbs. We use meditation. People count backwards from 10.
Mm-hmm.
We darken the room. You're using a very different aspect to help people sleep. And I want to explore that a little bit with you because it's not something I ever thought of. And I imagine most of our listeners haven't put this connection together either. So what is that all about?
Yeah, it's a story that has a lot of inputs. So it's not necessarily this like one aha moment per se. But one thing I just noticed is as I, in my practice, am getting histories from patients. One of them is a spiritual history. And very simple, I just ask, hey, is spirituality or religion an important part of your daily life? And I noticed, especially from my patients who profess to be Christians, that they had practices around bedtime, like Bible reading and prayer, that were important to their life. But then when I kind of said like, okay, so then how do you like draw upon that identity and those resources when you're faced with difficulty sleeping? They just kind of stare at me like, what are you talking about? So there is this gap between what people are professing to believe and then how they kind of draw upon those resources. And I think we've done a really good job in recent years in allopathic medicine to say, hey, we can, draw upon these other sources that are going to be helpful, whether that is yoga, or I said Yoda, that's crazy. Yoga, right? Yoga, meditation, guided imagery, deep breathing, like all of those things, we have more and more research to show that they're helpful for people to kind of calm down to be able to fall asleep. And then really what I noticed is like, well, this is really close to what people have in prayer, that they have in religious practice. And so then that was one thing, a little bit of curiosity of that. The other thing from my own kind of personal journey of integration of like myself being a Christian and trying to be like, how do I, practice medicine in a way that is distinct from my faith, but also acknowledges the position of authority that I have. So I'm not stepping on people's, autonomy or things of that nature too. But is there something different that I bring to the table? Part of that was I was just interested in like, okay, I'm hearing all this stuff about insomnia and difficulty falling asleep. And then this is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia has these specific kind of rules and instructions of how to kind of respond to sleeplessness. But then I'm reading the Bible and the Psalms are talking about very similar things that the authors are experiencing as well. And so I'm like, there's something that's like resonating between these two things. And I just don't have a framework or the language to realize what that overlap is. And then the last thing was I actually just found there's a whole body of research that looks at the connection between specifically religiosity, if you're from a sociology perspective. So those are kind of measuring your, rates of religious attendance or, prayer, or things of that nature. And there is a proposed framework that says, hey, if people who are more involved in religious environments, or as well as engage in kind of specific religious thoughts or behaviors, tend to have healthier sleep. So the book was my way of trying to take all of those observations and say, here's a really practical way that I can bring this to people to help them with their sleepless night.
Now, do you think this crosses all religions or just Christianity?
So my book, I'm specifically coming from a Christian faith perspective. There really is some interesting data when you look at, the Islam and specifically kind of there's interesting research around like Ramadan and how that impacts like sleep duration, but not necessarily other aspects of sleep quality. And you look at the Jewish faith and people who have like fixed hour prayer, which also it can be in the Muslim world as well, and how that actually can kind of be a better entrainer or does something specific for your circadian rhythm. So there's definitely research on other religions. But just since I personally am a Christian, it was easiest for me to access my religious faith tradition to bring that to people.
Sure. So interesting that you say that too. When you say there's a fixed hour of prayer, does it matter where that fixed hour actually occurs during the circadian rhythm to be more effective?
Yeah. So fixed hour prayer is in religious faith traditions that say, okay, we're going to pray at sunup and at noon and, sundown, or some kind of like specific time marker. We have to acknowledge a little bit of the modernity. We have clocks versus, and ancient times, they just had the sun or other kind of ways to talk about time. And so it was this, everyone has an agreed upon, we're praying all at this same time. And so really, I think what it does is that it's not necessarily about a magic sweet spot for the timing of it, as I think compared to the actual living my life every day where I have this other signal to my brain of I need to be awake and also like be engaged as well. And so that's going to be very different compared to if you don't necessarily have those anchors of markers of this is what's going on in your day.
Okay, makes sense. So as a Jewish human being, Ben, I was looking for an excuse since we start prayer after sundown as to why I always fell asleep in Hebrew school.
Yeah.
Or was interested. I can't even justify that all these years later. So, all right.
Right.
I probably paid more attention to the benefit rather than the detriments.
Yeah,
right?
I would say that might be more of a commentary on your teacher at Hebrew school than anything else.
Yeah, or just the typical young kid that
why am I doing this?
Appreciate until we get older, right? What we were actually learning, which I think is probably fair. Oh my gosh! All right, this is great. I could talk to you for hours about sleep, and we might just have to have you back, but we're going to have to take a quick commercial break. Before we do, though, here's what I would love, because I don't want to leave people hanging with something to do. Can you give us maybe a couple pieces of advice for people who don't sleep, quick things we should either look at, do, consider?
Yeah, I think the most applicable for our day and age is turn off all of the lights. Everything. We are pretty good at knowing about like screens, but I literally mean everything off in the house to get it as dark as possible. Because even if you don't add anything else, that can really be helpful if you're having difficulty falling asleep, to really send that full signal to your brain that it is nighttime and not trying to engage in anything or anything like that. So lights off. And then another good place to start too is just tracking your sleep for a couple of weeks. Let me just see how much sleep I get over a 2-week period and take the average of that. And that can give you a good anchor of what specifically your body needs.
Love it. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we are going to be back with Dr. Benjamin Long for some rapid fire, or as we all know and love, not so rapid fire questions. You up for that, Ben?
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. We will be right back. Sit tight. I am Dr. Cindy with the Positively Altered Podcast. This is your weekly dose of Dr. Cindy, the Positively Altered Podcast. Stop. Hit that follow button now and spread the love with Positively Altered. We are back. I am Dr. Cindy with the Positively Altered Podcast, and today's guest, Dr. Benjamin Long. We've been talking about sleep and a little bit about religion and theology and the relationship. And if you're just joining us now, you got to rewind, because it's actually really fascinating that there is a connection between the two. But Ben, we're going to switch gears. We're going to have a little fun. You ready?
Ready.
All right. What is one place on earth you have never been that you would love to see?
I would say Italy.
Oh, I've been. You got to go.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I could live there.
I could eat there. Definitely. I know that.
I could eat there. So I'll tell you. Okay. See, this is why this is not rapid fire, because I always have a comment after your answer. I will tell a quick little story. So when I was going to Italy, this is many years ago, I don't do dairy. I don't get along with dairy. It doesn't like me. I don't like it. We don't do dairy. And I always ask the locals, right? Like, I'm like, what's the one thing to do where you live? Because I don't like to do all the touristy stuff. And I have to tell you, the number one answer was eat the gelato. And now I'm depressed because I'm on a plane to one of the most amazing places I've ever been. And I'm like, I can't eat the gelato. 45 minutes off the plane, I was face deep in a large gelato. Truly, true story. And I was like, all right, we're going to see if it's worth it. Yeah. And what was interesting is I was there for 10 days. I made it to day 9 without getting sick. Here in this country, I would have looked at a bowl of gelato and been more information than everybody needs. They're probably in the bathroom. Yeah. It's unbelievable the way the food is actually made in different countries that we can handle a little bit better, as I believe our, digestive system was designed. So gelato, you got to go. Okay. And I would never tell you to eat dairy in this country, but in Italy, face deep. And I went from large to small because it was a little excessive. But anyway, I love that answer. All right. Biggest guilty pleasure you have?
Biggest guilty pleasure I have. I would say, see, it's a fine line because I don't necessarily want to embarrass myself, but I know that's what your audience wants. Yeah.
Oh, we're all about that.
All about it. You know what? I'll say it. One of my biggest guilty pleasures when I was in medical school, because I was just learning so many things, and I was like, I need garbage TV. Like, I need something that I do not think about at all, and I can just sit here and is like not medical in the least. So Project Runway, that was my like guilty pleasure in medical school. My wife and I would watch because I was like, this is nothing to do with medicine. I can just watch this and I can engage in the drama and not think for an hour.
See, and this is why people who are like, garbage TV is so evil. Yeah. You'd be amazed how many people give an answer or something like that, right?
Right.
No, absolutely. I have to admit, I'm not a big TV watcher, so I've never seen Project Runway, but if I choose to go that route, I'll put it on the list. That's for sure. All right. What is the weirdest food combo you eat?
I don't do this anymore. But when I was a teenager, oh gosh, it just makes me like sick thinking about it now. But I would go to the store and buy a Mountain Dew and a Hershey's cookies and cream bar. Do not go together at all. I would be sick if I did that now. But yep, that was like a go-to snack when I was a teenager.
And they're not even good separate.
No.
I wouldn't. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm going to leave that one alone. We have this thing where at the end of the year, I'm supposed to try a lot of the combos that people put together. And
don't recommend it.
Yeah, we might have to AI that one and pretend that it actually happened, because I'm not sure I can do that. All right. You can only have 3 apps on your phone for the rest of your life. What 3 apps do you pick?
Oh, man. I would pick. So boring. Solitaire, the Bible, and then probably my fitness app.
Wait a minute. If we read the Bible, if we get through the book, did anybody play solitaire back in the day?
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. Something new, something old. Yeah. I feel like we're having a wedding now here, Ben. Old, something new. We just need something blue. Yeah. Oh, that might be the weird cookies mixed with Mountain Dew. It might turn blue. You never know. Okay. We are going to create a new holiday. It's up to you. What are we celebrating? And what day of the year would you pick to celebrate that holiday?
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to slightly cheat because I think no one has heard of this before, probably listening. There is a World Sleep Day. It happens in March. It's usually the Friday before the spring equinox, so it changes slightly for the date. But there is a World Sleep Day where we try to bring awareness to the fact that sleep deprivation is such a huge problem. And I think that counts because probably no one in your audience, like, leave a comment if you're like, yes, I knew there was a World Sleep Day, then I will retract my statement. But I think no one has ever heard of that before.
Well, why don't we do this then, Ben? Pick another day of the year where we can celebrate it a second time so that it's unique.
So you know what? I'll just go for the fall equinox, whenever that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. So we've got 2 times a year we can celebrate that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there any word, one word that you would pick that you completely resonate with that's going to guide you this year?
I think the first thing that came to mind was generosity. I think we live in such a polarized time and age, and really just like, I think we just think so poorly about our neighbors. Sometimes they deserve it a little bit. That's who they show themselves to be. But that doesn't necessarily mean our response shouldn't be generous.
No, I love that. And lastly, Dr. Ben, what was your favorite thing about doing the podcast today?
Oh man, humiliating myself with Project Runway and Mountain Dew and cookies and cream. That's it. The rapid fire questions for sure.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, based on my audience, because I do know my audience,
Yeah.
you fit right in. There is no humiliation here at all. We are all in the same boat of just sharing and laughing. And I find sometimes the greatest joy I know I experience is just the self-deprecating laughter of myself, right? The silly things we do, we believe in, we think, and sharing them with the people that we care most about. So I love that. All right. How does everybody follow you, find you, buy the book? Give us all of that good information.
Yeah. So you can go to just sleephabitsjournal.com. That'll take you directly to my website, the book page specifically, and it has all of the different links. If you're like, I don't want to buy this on the internet, I want to go somewhere to buy it, most likely a Barnes & Noble is going to be your best bet. And if you live somewhere between Texas to Georgia, there should be some signed copies that I did on a recent road trip. So you might go hunting for one of those. But then that also just takes you to my website where you can explore more about me. I'm most prominent now on Substack. So I have links on there to be able to follow. If you are a sleep nerd, if you're a theology nerd, or somewhere in between, then you'd probably be interested in connecting with me there.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I'm just a nerd, so I don't know if that qualifies me, but it's good. So everybody, please check out the book. And one more time, the title, Ben?
Sleep Habits Journal.
Love it. All right. You got to find it, pick it up. I don't care where you get it. Just get it. Forge his signature. So you say you have a signed copy. It doesn't really matter, but read it. It's going to be great information. I know it is as it comes out, Ben. It's been an absolute joy. For those of you that want to learn more about what's going on in our world, please check us out at drsindyspeaks.com. There's an area on the website to join our not so daily newsletter because we don't send it to you every day so that we don't bombard you, but please become part of the community. And if you want to send us a message, reach us by email, hello@drsindyspeaks.com. And my book, Positively Altered, Finding Happiness at the Bottom of a Chemo Bag. If you haven't read it, you can also listen to it. I know some of you don't read, but there's an audio version that you can absolutely get your hands on. Ben, this has been an absolute pleasure. I have to tell you, sleep is interesting. We all do it. It's so important. We need it to be healthy, and we've got to really start paying attention to it so that we make sure our habits are good. And I love the awareness that you have brought today. Thank you again for listening. Please make sure you pass this along to your friends. I hope today has left you positively altered.